Of all the things in your life, what do you protect most carefully? You protect your home. You lock the doors each night before you go to bed. You take out insurance to cover it. You protect your money. You don't store it under the mattress. You keep it in a bank. If you've, for any reason, have to keep dangerous chemicals around your house, you protect them, you keep them out of reach of children. You maybe lock them up. We do all we can to protect our family members, to keep them safe. But of all the things in your life, what do you protect most carefully? Proverbs chapter 4 verse 23 tells us, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. So this morning we're thinking about your heart. The heart is a big theme in the Bible. It's mentioned about 1,000 times. It's mentioned 72 times in the book of Proverbs alone. And when the Bible talks about the heart, it's not just talking about the muscle that pumps blood around your body. It's talking about rather the core of your being. That's often how we speak of the heart in our everyday language as well. We talk about doing something with all your heart. We talk about someone having a change of heart. We talk about someone being broken-hearted. We say someone's heart is in the right place. So this morning we're thinking about your heart. And we're going to see two things about our hearts from Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. Firstly, everything you do flows from your heart. At the end of the verse says, for everything you do flows from it, from your heart. The older version of the NIV said, above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. That's a more literal translation. Our heart is a wellspring. It's a spring. It's the place where water bubbles out of the ground. It's the source of a stream or a river. Your heart is the wellspring of your life. It's the source of everything else in your life. Everything you do, everything you think begins in your heart. And so the Bible speaks a lot about doing things from our heart and with our heart. It says, love the Lord your God with all your heart. It says, forgive your brother from your heart. Jesus said, the things that come out of the mouth come from the heart. The Bible also tells us, if you believe in your heart that God raised Jesus from the dead, you will be saved. Jesus said, if anyone says to this mountain, go throw yourself into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart. Everything that we do is connected with our heart and flows from our heart. Other passages in the Bible tell us that our hearts can be dull, that they can be hard, that they can be weighed down, that they can be troubled, that they can be filled with sorrow, but also that they can rejoice. Everything you do flows from your heart. Everything you do begins in your heart. Everything you say begins in your heart. Everything you think begins in your heart. Everything you are begins in your heart. Everything you do flows from your heart. And because of that, it's critically important that we guard our heart. And so we see, secondly, above everything else, guard your heart. These two things are connected in the verse by the word for. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Because everything flows from our heart, we must be careful, most careful, to guard our hearts. The heart is the source of our life. And if the source is pure, what comes from it will be pure. But if the source is contaminated, what comes from it will be contaminated. If you find a source of pure water, the water coming out of that source is pure. But if the source of the water is contaminated, if an animal dies and falls into a stream, all the water that comes from that will be contaminated, all the way down to the sea. And the heart is the source of everything we do. If our hearts are contaminated, everything that comes from them will be contaminated. Some years ago, one of my uncles sunk a borehole on his farm for water. And one of the things he said at the time was that you need to be so careful when drilling down through the topsoil. Because if the borehole collapses before you get the pipe in to hold it in place, the source will be contaminated and your water will never be clean. So we're not just to try to patch up the outside of our lives. That'll never work. If you put all your effort into just trying to not be angry or not lust or to not waste your time or your money, that's patching up the outside. Instead, we need to fix the inside. And we need to deal with the source, with our hearts. It's essential that we make sure that our hearts are right. The verse tells us, above all else, guard your heart. Now, guard is a military word. The picture is that of a sentry protecting a building. He marches backwards and forwards in front of it. He looks all around him. He's protecting it. He's guarding it. You are the sentry. And the fortress that you're guarding is your heart. You need to make sure that nothing that shouldn't gets into your heart. That nothing gets through the doors of your heart that shouldn't get into your heart. What are the doors of your heart? Well, one of the doors of your heart are your eyes. Things get into your heart through your eyes. And what you look at affects your heart. What you watch on TV, on the internet, on your phone, what you read, the books, the magazines. You are a sentry that needs to guard what gets into your heart through your eyes. Another door to your heart is your ears. And what you listen to affects your heart. So you need to be careful about the songs that you listen to, about the friends that you listen to. Another door to the heart are the feet. We can't go many places now, but the places that you go affect your heart. You are a sentry. Your duty is to guard your heart, to protect it, to stop harmful things from getting into your heart. It's probably not a coincidence that the following verses in Proverbs chapter 4 tell us to watch our mouth, our eyes, and our feet. Above all else, guard your heart. Above all else. Do you protect your heart better than you protect anything else? Do you sometimes leave the doors of your heart unguarded? You make sure to lock the doors of your house every night. You should be equally careful to lock the doors of your heart. How often do you leave the keys in the ignition when you park your car in a car park in Letterkenny? You don't. You guard it. You protect it. We're to be the same. We're to be even more careful with our heart. How often do you leave your life savings sitting on the kitchen table? You don't. You're careful about it. And we are to be equally careful, more careful, about protecting and guarding our hearts. You're careful about what you do. You're careful about what you say. And that's good and that's right. But we should be even more careful about our heart. Being clean on the inside is more important than being clean on the outside. And that's what Jesus said in Matthew 23, verses 25 and 26. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrite! You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and dish, and then the outside also will be clean. We need a heart like Jesus had. We're told that Jesus was gentle and humble in heart. We need a heart that's pure. We can't get that ourselves. We can't get it by our own efforts. Only God can create that new heart within us. That's what we need him to do. And that's what he does do for everyone who becomes a Christian when they become a Christian. He gives them a new heart, a clean heart, a pure heart, a heart that loves him. And it's our job to guard that heart, to protect it from the evil influences around it. This is something that Solomon is emphasizing in this proverb. A few verses earlier in Proverbs 4, verse 20, he says, "My son, pay attention to what I say. Listen closely to my words." He wants to make sure that this advice is heeded. Why is Solomon so urgent about this? Why does he emphasize this point so much? Is Solomon warning his son not to make the same mistake that Solomon himself had made? In 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 4, we're told, "As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father had been." One writer says, Solomon, out of his painful experience, pleaded with his children, "Of all you guard nothing with the care and strength you guard your heart." The heart. Everything you do flows from your heart. So above everything else, guard your heart. Do everything you can to make sure that the source is pure. Put your time and your effort into that. Because when the source is pure, your life will be pure.